Teachers of Reddit, what is the most NSFW thing you've seen while being a teacher? Former college faculty here. The worst one I have experienced was being in the bathroom while some guy was having phone sex, while he was taking a crap. To this day I am amazed that I was able to not laugh. Posted this on a similar one once, but applies here. Currently a teacher at a secondary school UK where a student with additional needs likes to have a wank at the back of his classes. He's done it once in mine, I'm male, and at least twice in a female colleague's, so he's not picky or anything, just likes to tickle his pickle when he can. Had to bring parents in. Apparently it's all the rage at home too. Even dinner isn't off limits, as mum's caught him with pasta in one hand and his cock in the other before. It's the little things that make this the noble profession. Not a teacher, but in 10th grade, my history class was covering World War II and the Holocaust, so the teacher had us watch Schindler's List in class. For those who haven't seen the movie, there is a scene where the Nazi camp guards line up the prisoners completely naked. Children, men, and women of all age groups were lined up and nothing was censored. Truly a horrific scene in a sad, but fantastic movie. Out of the corner of my eye, I see one of my classmates jerking off under the desk, dick in hand, while looking at the screen very intensely. The teacher walked over and sat on the back tables next to his desk and he stopped. After the bell rung, the teacher asked my classmate to stay and talk to her. I can only imagine the conversation they had or how the teacher mentally prepped herself for that kind of talk. Obviously, being in 10th grade, we gave the guy shit about it the entire rest of the year. Schindler's Lust. Using an office chair to aim his anus, true battles hit style. Thankfully the chamber was empty, but the puckering and pulsing as he tried will scar me forever. What kind of classes did you have? I teach students with challenging behaviors. You don't say. A few years back, a teacher at my school had sexy pics taken for her husband, and wanted to email them to him. She scanned them on a printer at work, and uploaded them to a shared public directory, thinking she was uploading them to a private folder, which I still don't know why she thought this was a good idea. Needless to say, it didn't take long for someone to find her pics on the shared directory. Why would you even consider doing that at work, especially at a school? Horny people do strange things. Had a 4-year-old tell me the myriad of ways he'd like to kill me, shoot me with gun till I'm dead, put me in fire until I'm dead, etc. Then he tried to push a shelf over on a sleeping child. Fun times. A pair of Year 10 going at it doggy style in a secluded stairwell. For non-Brits out there, Year 10 is the same as HS freshman, so around 14 to 15 years old. Thank you for that clarification. I had the wrong impression and was horrified. Kids would airdrop naked pics to whoever had theirs turned on. After teachers getting a bunch of pictures, we had a huge school investigation. I taught 7th and 8th grade. Walked into the restroom one day and caught a 6th grade girl giving an 8th grade boy a blowjob. School camp for 14 to 15-year-olds. Walk in on a girl giving a guy a hand job with about 4 other guys just sitting around watching. School camp for 14 to 15-year-olds. Walk in on a girl giving a guy a hand job with about 4 other guys just sitting around watching, waiting for their turn. I was a student in high school, and in my junior year we had a substitute shit himself. I felt bad for the guy, but it brought much joy to my heart because the chair he shit himself in belonged to my old history teacher, who we later found out was a pedophile. I teach middle school literature and theater. First year of teaching. After a rehearsal when I thought all my students had been picked up, went back to the stage to collect a few things. Walked in on 2 8th graders getting super touchy-feely. Guy had gotten her shirt off and was working on removing her bra. Not sure who was more embarrassed, me or the kids. Turned my back, told them to get dressed and get to the front doors. Immediately called both families. Both were pretty cool with it, all things considered. Worst part was, about 3 minutes into the conversation with the girl's father, he realized I'd seen her without a shirt on. Don't think I made eye contact with either one of them for the rest of the year. Lots of discussion on whether I was right to contact the parents. I feel like that's fair. In the moment it was a total CYA choice. If I contact them immediately and say this is what happened and what I saw and what I did, then that's the story. If I do nothing, and it comes out later, it's really easy for either of the kids to say, well, he was standing there watching with a big grin on his face. Teaching is a profession where even the appearance of impropriety is a fearable offense. Teachers have lost their jobs for less. Used to be a teacher for a year, but this story is relatively tame compared to some of the things I'm reading here. One day I was giving a test, walking in between the students. Some girl sitting in the last row. Everyone was bent over to fill in the test, but every time I walked behind the last row, it appeared as if that girl had pulled her pants lower and lower, up until the point she was nearly sitting on the chair with her bare cheeks. Of course I had to tell her it was inappropriate, at which point she had to button up her pants again in order for them to stay up. Very strange thing to comment on, I can tell you that. This reminds me of a story a classmate told me many years ago. Seems he'd had a girl in his class a year earlier who had to get herself off every morning in first period. As he told it to me, every morning, she'd come in real grumpy. Then she'd sit at her desk with her heel tucked under her crotch and start rocking. After a few minutes her face would get all flushed, and she'd spasm a few times. Then she'd be all cheerful the rest of the day. Everyone in the class knew what she was doing. After a while, we all ignored her. I always wondered if this girl thought she was getting away with it, or if being watched helped her get off. I worked IT at a school, had a laptop come in that suddenly stopped working for no reason. In a surprise to no one, the inside was filled with sticky brown soda residue. Got the motherboard replaced at a shop, powered it on, and horse porn, with a lot of search history to go along with it. I considered my job done and just handed it to the principal and was on my way. When I powered on the computer, the browser recovered the previously opened pages, and that is where everything popped up. We looked through the search history afterwards, but still, it was a school-owned machine. Checking search histories on them was pretty standard, not a furry thing. Real horses, real people. Also a lot of people mentioned Mr. Hands, so I made the mistake of looking that up. Yeah, like that, but multiple different videos. I teach group music lessons. One group consists of 5 9-year-old girls who are learning the flute. While one of them was in the bathroom, another grabbed her flute, held it to her posterior and farted on it. She placed it back on the table and muttered, "That's what she gets for wearing a hat indoors." School policy is if you vomit you have to go home. Girl had detention after school and I had her last period. She vomited all over her book deliberately so she wouldn't have to go to detention. It did not work. My 2 students, 3 years old, both needed to go to the toilet but both decided to pull their pants down before they got to the toilet door. One kid later didn't pull up his pants properly so his pee-pee was overhanging his trousers and was trying to show me, locate a bruise on his leg. The other kid decided to pull his pants up outside of the toilet. This was the day I unintentionally saw 2 little boys pee-pee. One of my mom's students would masturbate in class. Had her feet up on the desk and everything. It was 2nd grade. Preschool teacher here, and this is about to get weird. One thing kids have in common is they reach an age where the mysteries of their bodies become incredibly fascinating. One aspect of this is when little boys realize they get erections. Yes, if you're not a parent or a teacher, little boys get erections. Even infants do. One time when I was teaching 4 to 5-year-olds, one little boy was taking way too long in the bathroom. The door went 3/4 of the way to the ceiling so teachers could monitor, and when I peeked into the bathroom I found one of our little boys exploring himself. By this I mean he was using his little boner to push the bathroom stall door open, letting it swing back, then pushing it open again. Kids are weird. I was a science teacher in a boys' boarding school. The school was located in a very cold region and so some kids would skip showers. Once I was on duty and I had to go inspect the boys' dorms. I noticed a really awful smell coming off one kid. I reported him to his house master so he can get him to shower. Long story short, at some point it came to light that the kid had developed gangrene around his private parts and in his feet. It fell on me as the teacher on duty to take him to the hospital. P.S. The school had hot water showers for students but not in the teachers' quarters, so all the teachers showered with cold water. This kid really had no excuse. I'm a college student but work as an elementary school aide in a year-round school during my breaks. Last year, one of my little third-grade sweethearts with ASD had a meltdown which led to him stripping down completely naked and hurting himself by hitting himself and pulling on his penis extremely hard. Thankfully, this happened in the intervention room and we were able to move the other students to another section before he started taking clothes off. But it was still really nerve-wracking since we knew that if anyone else happened to walk in, it would be really hard to explain why there were 4 adults trying to catch and restrain a naked 8-year-old. The episode only lasted about 10 minutes, though, and he's never done anything like that since. Poor baby felt so awful afterwards that he demanded that we call the police since he knew that what he'd done was inappropriate. So, we called the intervention specialist's best friend who was on maternity leave and had her pretend to be a 911 operator so he could turn himself in, because every time we told him that wasn't necessary, he'd call himself bad and the situation would start to escalate again. After the police told him that they'd be by to get the full report from the principal at the end of the day, the lil nug spent the whole day staring out the window, rocking himself back and forth in a rocking chair, as if he was contemplating what life was gonna be like in the big house. At the end of the day, we told him the police wanted us to give him candy as a reward for his day spent in isolation, and now we let him decide to when he wants to skip music class. As a camp counselor, I had to separate 2 boys about 8 years old having a sword fight in the bathroom. Needless to say, I was the one who needed to talk to someone after that. It was after pool time and we were in the locker room changing. These 2 boys had gotten pretty friendly, but the issue is one of them had listening issues. Because he had deaf parents. Bad home issues. Anyways, he was a good kid but had issues listening, so I was helping another kid change. He was 5, so for them putting on clothes wasn't always easy. I heard them giggling and one said, "I cannot emphasize more that this is real, mine's bigger than yours, haha," and that gathered my attention and I looked over and I was like, "Hey, you 2 separate and change." I pulled one over to change on the other side, and once they did I took both to the camp office to talk to my boss. Back when was an intern, I used to spend a lot of time with the school's IT guy. One of the duties was updating the browser filter so students couldn't use the internet freely. This was before laptops were common in schools. The list of blocked websites included some very weird and freaky sites. Not a teacher, but my mother was, and she has lots of great stories. But one in particular comes to mind. Some elementary school classrooms have very large metal ceiling fans. I haven't been to an elementary school in some time, but I know growing up I remember them, not sure if they are still in use now. Anyway, the ones I had in class growing up always had a large metal cage surrounding the fan so that no one would get hit by it. They are very powerful and made out of metal. One day, my mom was sitting in the classroom late after school grading papers at her desk. She talked about how she was always friendly with the janitor that would come in and clean the classroom at the end of the day and enjoyed chatting with him while he did his job. She's sitting there grading papers and all of a sudden, bang, she looks up and he's been flung across the room and landed a bloody mess in a pile of desks. He had been dusting the overhead lights on a stepladder when the metal ceiling fan caught him in the head, split his forehead open, blood everywhere. My mom uses the rags from the blackboard to apply pressure and stop the bleeding the best she could. Called 911. Paramedics show up. Apparently there was so much blood at this point that she joked about one of the paramedics being lightheaded and having to sit for a moment outside. In the end the janitor was alright. My mom was on some old TV show called Rescue 911 or something like that for applying pressure and reducing the guy's blood loss. This, and I'm sure other incidents, are the reason these metal ceiling fans now have the cage enclosure I remember from my elementary classrooms. Definitely not safe for work.